Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where focus in the comic book movie media is already beginning to shift towards Avengers Infinity War, which doesn't come out until 2018. Why would Marvel allow this when they have so many films slated to come out first? Well, it's pretty shrewd, I think, because all of those films that are going to come out, with probably the exception of Spider-Man Homecoming, are building blocks to Avengers Infinity War. So not only does it build up the mythology of the end game, but also it makes each of those stepping stones to the big movie a must-see. I mean, I think they're already a must-see at this point because, as I've said before, Marvel is the Pixar of the superhero genre, but it doesn't help to have some backup to even further guarantee that people see your films. So, of course, you have Doctor Strange coming out later this year. Then you have Guardians of the Galaxy kicking off summer 2017, followed by Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, and then finally Avengers Infinity War kicking off summer 2018. So how are they getting it in the news? Well, they're having their talent do it. For instance, and before some of you might say, well, this is just the talent out of control or doing as they wish. But Kevin Feige, I'm sure, keeps very close tabs on what his talent is allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. He has a little bit of a leak problem. I think that Brie Larson was something they probably would have liked to have announced cold at Comic-Con. But of course, everybody knew that months in advance. But for the most part, Marvel is a very well-run ship. But two things happened. Vin Diesel confirmed that Guardians of the Galaxy will appear in Infinity War, which I'm sure one of the reasons Kevin Feige was okay with that is because if you've read the Infinity War comic, of course the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to show up in Infinity War because they're a major part of the storyline. And of course, Thanos is really their villain, or starting out as their villain. Although I thought it was funny that Vin Diesel's the one to announce that, and his beef with Dwayne Johnson, which does seem to be the case, not Scott Eastwood, continues because Dwayne Johnson sent out a big thank you for rapping on Fast 8, and he made sure to thank Scott Eastwood, but as Entertainment Weekly, for instance, pointed out, he had nothing to say about Vin Diesel. That F8 beef is crazy, and Universal should be doing everything they can to squash it, because I think at this point, it's verging on unprofessional. I mean, Dwayne Johnson had his say, he sat down with Vin Diesel apparently, and now I think they're putting a little bit of a cloud over the film. I'd be like, shut it down, Dwayne. We paid you a lot of money. It's not to social media your personal problems out over the film. But anyway, the Russo Brothers also had an interesting quote this week saying that Avengers Infinity War will feature endings for some characters and new beginnings for others. Now, we don't know if that means a character will die, decide to retire, take a break. We'll see. But I think that, it's pretty easy to guess who's in each camp. I think that Hulk, for instance, could be a character that might sacrifice himself. He's obviously going to be focused on a lot in Thor Ragnarok. And also, of course, in the comics right now, Civil War II, they've killed off Bruce Banner. I'm sure he'll come back somehow. But still, they could be laying the groundwork for a potential storyline in the near future. Also, you have to realize that Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor have all finished their trilogies. So this would be a perfect time for those characters to have an amazing moment of glory in Avengers Infinity War and at the very least take a break. Then there are new characters, which, as I've guessed beforehand, might all be potentially infinity powered. And so there's a very good chance they could have those new beginnings. I think Scarlet Witch and Vision obviously are infinity stone powered, so they're prime candidates. But I think Doctor Strange, I think the Eye of Agamotto has been reimagined as an infinity gem. And then Captain Marvel, they've admitted that her origin story will be changed. I feel it will be an infinity stone. And so you're probably definitely going to see a new beginning for that character because her movie won't even have come out yet. I don't think that her origin will take place in Infinity War, but maybe it will. Maybe she'll grab that stone, get her powers, and then deal with the fallout in her own movie. So we'll see what happens. So that's the first story of the day, and I'm curious, are you excited about Avengers Infinity War? I think they have a lot of work to do building up Thanos, and even the Infinity Stones. I think, well, that's something that a lot of us hardcore fans know about. I think if you were to ask a regular moviegoer, they would not really realize the importance of those stones at all. all. Even though they did do kind of a little bit of an introductory course with Guardians of the Galaxy, I still think that that is one area where I think Marvel's perhaps the weakest in setting up this film. So they've got some work to do, but they've got 5 movies to do it in. And I'm also curious to see which characters you would like to see have an ending and which characters you'd like to see have a new beginning. Now, speaking of new beginnings, Ruben Fleischer's career is shockingly still alive. I think because Zombieland was so strong, Gangster Squad couldn't kill it. But in all the press for this new deal that he has coming together, everyone keeps saying the director of Zombieland, but nobody mentions Gangster Squad. His PR agent is doing a nice job. Or perhaps that's the studio that he'll now be working for, but whatever, they're setting it up nicely. So what did he land? He's going to be doing a cops movie based on the incredibly popular and very long-running TV series that many people enjoy. Now they want to turn it into a Lethal Weapon type of duo comedy, I wrote in my notes also Let's Be Cops was kind of like that recently, and that was an okay film actually, thanks to the talent. They had a very good cast there. But they really want to use the theme song, the Cops theme song. That's really what they're itching to use. But the Cops brand, I think, is very strong. However, at the same time, I think that because one of the things, whenever I talk to people who watch Cops, I watch Cops occasionally. I'm not a big Cops fan, but I know some Cops fans, and they always talk about the things they learn on Cops. Like, watching Cops, I learned that you should never do this with the police, or that perps or suspects always do this, right? Innocent until proven guilty. So I think that a big part of the show will have to be that kind of reality, right? And the things that people like learning about actual interactions between the police and the people that they interact with, but also casting those perps, so I think is going to be a big part of the success of this movie. So it'll be interesting to see if it comes together, and if the studio and Ruben Fleischer really understand what they're trying to make a movie of, or if they're just blinded by the theme song and they miss the real reason that people like that show. Because they could just listen to the theme song and then turn it off, but Cops, I think, has been around a lot longer for a different reason. But I'm curious, did any of you watch Cops? If so, why do you like it? And how do you think it would best be transitioned into a movie? Then the third story of the day, this was a big story that broke late last week, but it's not a particularly sexy story, so it didn't get a lot of coverage beyond, the initial headlines. And that's that Ben Affleck has decided to do another movie, a smaller movie for Fox this time, he's going to remake Witness for the Prosecution and take on the Tyrone Power role. Now, this is an Agatha Christie story originally, and the Agatha Christie estate will be involved. And the Agatha Christie estate has also actually gotten into business with Fox. They're also doing a remake of Murder on the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh, not only starring as Hercule Poirot, but also directing. So I think that's good for Fox to get into the Agatha Christie business. We'll see if her brand has any pull with the public, but she thankfully tells good stories. But this is an interesting remake. I think it's very good for Ben Affleck, and I saw someone in the comments talk about that ever since Gone Girl, he's decided to play kind of sketchy dudes, right? And that was the case with the accountant that's coming up. And also Tyrone Power's role in Witness for the Prosecution is a sketchy dude. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a good way to play off of Ben Affleck's, not only his very good looks, but also his slightly bad boy reputation that he's gotten over the years, in his personal life. And also, the idea that he's this brilliant artist, I think, also plays into that a little bit, right? Like the scoundrel, I think he doesn't play like someone who's evil to some degree, but he plays usually someone who's a little bit redeemable or at least interesting. I like juxtaposing his matinee idol looks with someone who is perhaps not matinee idol good, and I think it's really working for him. I think it's a great idea, and I think that this Tyrone Power role is a perfect fit. But what's interesting to me is who are they going to cast in the Marlene Dietrich role, who was also a co-star in the original Witness for the Prosecution. Very good movie. I've actually seen it. I don't know if you would want to watch it. It depends how long it takes for this movie to come together. Sometimes they announce films and they just, sit in, pre-production or development hell. But I think that the Marlene Dietrich role, if they actually get someone of comparable talent and age, and they have them star opposite, Ben Affleck in the Tyrone Power role, that would be fantastic, because Marlene Dietrich played Tyrone Power's wife. So I would love to see maybe Helen Mirren take on the role and play Ben Affleck's wife. I think that would be fantastic and very, very exciting. And I would much rather see Ben Affleck do this with his time than the Strangers on a Train remake, which I'm actually very much against. I think because Witness for the Prosecution is a great story, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's an amazingly directed film. It's a classic film, but not to the degree that Strangers on a Train is. So we'll see. Although I have to say that some of the ways they reimagined Strangers on a Train were a little bit interesting, about making it a private plane, about making it, the backdrop being promoting films for awards season. I thought that was all pretty clever. So we'll see. I think Ben Affleck, I really like Ben Affleck these days. I think he's very talented, and I really like what he's doing. So I'm excited for this. And so the two big takeaways here are Ben Affleck rebranding himself, who's going to play Marlena Dietrich's role, and that Fox is getting into the Agatha Christie business. All right, so let's get on to the viewer question of the day from Sean Stevenson. And Sean says, question, hi Grace. Hi Sean. Since Batman v Superman has been gaining a lot of traction since the Ultimate Edition was released, do you think in the future Warner Brothers would take the risk to release a longer theatrical edition of an upcoming DCEU film, even though it's longer than the typical 2 hours? I know I wouldn't mind a longer movie since I sat through the Lord of the Rings movies back in the day multiple times. Maybe Suicide Squad would have been saved if it had a different or longer cut. Thanks. Love your show. Great question, Sean. Really great question. And I think that your question allows me to point out a division in the DC fan base, right? I think that there are some people who want to see a more fun comic book movie emerge, and those are the people that have backed Suicide Squad. But then there are some of us, myself included, who really liked the intellectual approach that Batman v Superman, the theatrical cut, took, and something that Suicide Squad did not, although it seemed to from its trailers. I think one of the reasons that I and so many people were disappointed is that we thought we were getting another intellectual approach to a comic book film, which was very exciting. That was not the case. I would like to, though, put an asterisk there and say that there are some people who like both Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. But I do think that they're really at a fork in the road. Do they go like the fun, less serious comic booky way, or do they go to the more intellectual approach that Batman v Superman with Chris Terrio writing started them out on? Of course, my vote, the intellectual approach, but Suicide Squad, of course, has its legion of fans. So the reason I bring that up is that I do not think that a longer cut would have helped Suicide Squad. I think the things that were cut out of Suicide Squad were cut out because they didn't gel with test audiences. They were too violent. They didn't like the abuse, the physical and mental abuse of Harley Quinn at the hands of the Joker. And they wanted a lighter film. So, I think that to layer in those maybe darker, more sophisticated things that were cut, that Jared Leto has, talked about at length at this point, would have given them a film that, they didn't want. And maybe, the intellectual approach, I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if that's the right approach, even though I like it so much and others do. So I think that at some point DC is going to have to, I don't know if they're going to have to decide. You can have different flavors in the DCEU, but I also have a problem with Suicide Squad in terms of just the quality of the storytelling and the structure. I think it lacks structure. But anyway, as for longer movies, I think again it depends on the cut. I don't think in either case a longer cut would have helped either film. I don't like the Ultimate Edition cut. I think it dumbs the movie down a little bit and, takes away a lot of what made it interesting in terms of the Superman character. But it still would have been too inside baseball for a lot of people. And I think that, again, Suicide Squad, it would have changed what kind of film it was, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing I do like about your question, Sean, is that I would like to see comic book movies get longer. I think that, studios are against it because it makes it, you can play less showtimes in each theater, right? So it hurts. They want to get in and out, revolving door at the multiplex. But I think, as you pointed out, some really long movies can do very well, like the Lord of the Rings films. Although that's only the first trilogy. The second trilogy, while it did well, didn't do quite as well. So I would love to see a DCEU movie that was 2 to 3 hours long. I think it would be fantastic. But I think that DC has other problems they have to fix first before they can commit to that kind of storytelling, right? I think they don't have all their ducks in a row, and I think that nobody wants to watch a super long cut of something that's sloppy or isn't a 4-quadrant film, right? I think Marvel perhaps could get to this point now where they could make a 3-hour movie. Like Infinity War could be totally 3 hours. Maybe it should be. But I think that, I think you have to be in a little better shape before you can you can graduate to the longer films. But I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you want to watch a longer comic book movie, or do you like them short and sweet, so to speak? Also, what do you think of the DCEU? Do you think it should go the intellectual route? Do you think it should go the more fun comic booky route? Do you want to mix maybe? And then also, do you think DC is ready to go to graduate to a longer film? And do you think that that would help them? Be sure to write your thoughts down below. Thank you for your question, Sean. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Sean's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.